So just for your information, since I've been in Tasmania, in Sarawak I spoke to a range of people. Since I've been here, I've spoken to Kim Booth, I've spoken to Jenny Webber, and trying to get hold of Terry Edwards. Okay, so it's going to be a bit of a he said, she said type of story, as you can imagine. I've explained quite a bit of that on our way down here. I'll do my best to represent the story as a tricky story. It's a difficult story for me to do because it's, the extremes are quite, there's some big wild accusations flowing around, and there's, I also spoke to Claire Rewcastle-Brown, who is pretty set in her ways on this stuff, and I tested her as well. I gave her a pretty hard time as well. I mean, I'm not sort of just I'm not a pushover if you're worried about that. So anyway, just start on the peace negotiations at the moment. How are they going to be favourable to Ta'an?
Well, we literally don't know yet. It's been over 2-year process, and it's continuing. Just last week, the Premier gave an extension of a further week, and we're being as supportive as we can to try and ensure there is a sustainable outcome from those talks.
Are you concerned that the outcome may be that Forestry Tasmania won't be able to fulfil its contractual obligations to Ta'an?
Well, that may be an outcome. We're not in a position to judge that yet, but we do have a commercial contract with Forestry Tasmania as our principal log supplier, and we'll just have to wait to see what the results of those negotiations with the environmental groups and industry produce.
But there is some concern, I'm assuming.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the parties understand what volumes are required to operate the mills. They understand the contracts that are in place, and I think they're all trying to work to get a solution that protects the high conservation value forests and still provides a long-term and sustainable supply of wood to both sawmills and veneer mills in Tasmania.
Is there a danger that if the contractual obligations are put under stress or threat, that there will be a compensation to be paid somewhere along the line?
Well, we've got commercially binding agreements with our wood supplier. I mean, you can't finance the development of 2 new mills and all the equipment unless you go to your bank with a commercial contract for the supply of wood. And that commercial contract has a commercial value. So at the end of the day, we'll just have to assess what comes from the peace talks. We are hopeful of a solution. We work very cooperatively with all the parties, including the environmental groups. We've been doing a number of trials to increase the flexibility in those negotiations, and we'll wait the outcome.
Okay. Would you say that the original contract with Forestry Tasmania was a good deal for Ta'an?
Well, there are a number of parties who were interested in building veneer plants in Tasmania, and the critical issue for Ta'an was whether it had a long-term sustainable supply, and most importantly, that it was a certified supply of sustainable wood. And that was the key issue for the company in making its investment decision.
And obviously, but what about the price and quantity that was involved in that original contract? Was it a good deal for Ta'an?
Well, I think it was a good commercial arrangement for both Forestry Tasmania and Ta'an. Previously, the logs that you see behind me were going for chip export. So probably one of the lowest grades of use for wood in Tasmania. These logs that were previously wood chip logs are now being turned into high value veneers for a range of applications. So it was a good result for both Ta'an, for Forestry Tasmania in getting improved returns, and for Tasmania in terms of the employment and other benefits.
What about the 10 million in subsidies that the Tasmanian government offered to Ann. It seems like a lot of money to a multi-million-dollar company from Malaysia.
Well, I'm disappointed that you sort of create a stereotype about a Malaysian company. I mean, a range of different companies that operate...
any foreign company that's obviously not even a foreign company, a multi-million-dollar operation.
Yes, but I mean, in our country, in Australia, regularly investments are made in infrastructure to encourage regional development. Similar investments are made in tourism. Similar investments are made in dairy. Similar investments are made in other areas of forest products. Governments, both state and federal, make infrastructure investments to encourage new industry. They expect to get returns from payroll tax, from company tax, from income tax. So it's not unusual. It was publicly declared. It was a very open, transparent process, and very similar to the grants that are being made today under the Regional Employment Development Program right around the state.
Some people I've spoken to have described it as $100,000 per job created. It seems that money could have been used, for example, to pay for 20 nurses at Hobart Hospital for 10 years.
Well, when you think about it in that way, you're not thinking about the long-term nature of the investment. I mean, this is not just creating the direct jobs that are here at this mill. There are contractors who are supplying logs. There are a whole range of service industries that provide electrical and other contracting services. So there's a range of benefits rather than just the direct jobs. You need to measure the total of both the direct and the indirect employment, as well as then the payment of company tax, payroll tax, income tax, and all the other benefits that flow through, including payments of local taxes to local government.
So you would strongly disagree with claims that there's nothing in this for the average Tasmanian?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a farcical argument. I mean, you don't hear the same people suggesting that investing $10 or $20 million in national parks or investing additional dollars in training and education facilities, and this is what state and federal governments do on a regular basis. They look and identify opportunities that will benefit widely the local community. And this investment certainly provided benefits both here in the Huon and also in Smithton.
So you wouldn't say it's a very expensive job creation scheme then?
Well, not if you have a look at the range of programs and the range of benefits that are available. This clearly has benefits not just for the direct jobs here in Smithton and the Huon, but has benefits for a range of other supporting industries.
Okay, so how is it that how is it that for 5 years, with that grant of $10 million and a very favourable contract, that Tarn's been making a loss?
Well, it's very typical in the start-up companies when you've made in excess of $80 million of investment in brand new processing. For the very first time in this country, producing rotary veneers for a brand new market, then you expect that in those early years of your development you will bear losses, and part of the judgment the company made was it would carry those losses in the early years while it developed the markets, while it developed the use of eucalyptus in these new markets overseas. It would carry those losses, expecting to produce profits as the product gained more acceptance and as you work through all of the local issues in processing.
I'm not very good with numbers, but somebody who is explained to me that the Australian system is about depreciation, and that doesn't kind of it doesn't make sense. I don't even really know how to ask the question, but they explained that the system here is not about the capital investment up front, it's a depreciation system, and that still seems odd that after 5 years you'd still be making a loss.
Well, no, I don't think so at all. I mean, the Australian system that applies to Tarn applies to every other Australian company. There's nothing particularly unique about either taxation or depreciation system in this country. I mean, the fact is, this is a first for Tasmania. The investment in new rotary veneer mills producing this type of product in international markets. The company made a decision about that investment and accepted that in the first few years of operation there would be losses, but as you get more volume through those mills, as you improve the product supply chain and you gain the experience in using eucalyptus, it's expected to make long-term profits that are sustainable for the company and its shareholders.